Hello again. Former President Thabo Mbeki is questioning how the ANC has been handling the Phala Phala saga. In a letter supposedly written by him to the Deputy President Paul Mashatile, Mbeki criticises how the party's parliamentary caucus pushed the vote on the Phala Phala report and corruption at Eskom. We're joined by political analyst Rebone Tau. She's also the author of The Rise and Fall of the ANC Youth League. Rebone, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So in this leaked open letter that is purportedly by the former President Thabo Mbeki, how would you characterize his tone? Because this is not the first time that he's speaking out, right, against the sitting president. How would you characterize maybe his posture, not tone, his posture towards the president of not only the ANC but the country?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. I think for me, first and foremost, before we go into the letter, is that what is interesting that the letter is written to the Deputy President, and not the SGO, which is the Secretary General's office, including the two Deputy Secretary Generals, because in terms of organizational processes, I mean, Balula, as the Secretary General, he's the custodian, of the Constitution, of the ANC, he's full-time at Letule House, and normally you would see the Secretary General even going to the ANC caucus to address the ANC caucus. But interesting enough that he has written to the Deputy President, and we know that there was also a delay regarding the Deputy President's appointment as the Deputy President of the Republic. So there's also seems like there's been politics being played here, and why the letter went to Paul Mashatile. But I think if you read, the tone, he's been consistent, for the past year around issues pertaining Phala Phala, he's been very vocal. This is a person who also has been attending National Executive Committee meetings of the ANC under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, and we have seen him, being very active within the party. So this letter, really, he's also showing concerns. He speaks about even the Freedom Charter in the letter, the people shall govern, and this is some of the things that the ANC have forgotten about when you speak about the people shall govern.
Yeah, in fact, with the Phala Phala matter, he likens it to the Nkandla matter, if you will, that this, is no different from that. What do you make of that? Do you remember him being as vocal during the tenure of the former President Jacob Zuma?
He was not as vocal as we have seen him over the past few months, during the era of the former President Jacob Zuma. And, when you look at his comparison to Nkandla, indeed, the ANC is going through what they went through under Nkandla. But also you must remember, this is not the first time that he's writing a letter, to the leadership of the ANC. A few years back, he wrote a letter to the then President Jacob Zuma. But what was very interesting about that letter, you could see that there was mutual respect between the two comrades, And secondly, he was addressing even how the then Secretary General Gwede Mantashe was dealing with political matters using organizational processes, So you can see that even, in the letter, how he speaks, he writes, even says, Comrade JZ, it shows, these are comrades in arms. And with their history being together and having worked together in some instances in exile.
You mentioned that there may be politics at play. According to you, to what end? Because this is also being done in the name of the masses and the people not turning against the African National Congress.
I think we need to understand also maybe the historical context of the relationship between the two. Before President Ramaphosa went into business, he was the Secretary General of the ANC. They were both eyeing for the position of being the Deputy President to Mandela. Some would even say during even the CODESA, President Mbeki was also pulled out, and that's when you saw President Ramaphosa at the time during the CODESA negotiations, being very central. So they've got a history, these two, and I think for him, as I said, this is politics. Why is it that during under the Jacob Jacob Zuma era, he was not as vocal when a lot of things happened. That he just, I mean, that's why today we've got the Zondo Commission, report. It's because of some of the things that happened. The issue of Eskom is not a new thing. It even happened during the Zuma era, the challenges of load shedding and so forth. But he is correct. I mean, it's of concern, great concern, that actually the ANC in Parliament seems to want to close ranks at all costs. We have seen also in the last quarter, in terms of how the economy, has hit a knock, and it's because of such things as Eskom. We've been reading reports that also investors are pulling out outside of South Africa because of there is that instability when it comes to electricity in this country. So I think he is, raising genuine things, but there's also politics played. Yeah,
in fact, the Secretary General of the ANC will probably, I say this very carefully, will probably have a media briefing, because ever since he's been Secretary General, every Monday there's a briefing from Fikile Mbalula, but he's since made it known that the ANC will then engage the former president and they will have a meeting on this matter. Is that what is needed, a meeting on this matter? Because it's not just a matter that is concerning the ANC, it's impacting the entire country, that there's a form of exceptionalism with certain leaders of the party in terms of accountability, particularly one that came on the ticket of being an anti-corruption champion.
I want us to go back to last year, just before conference. There was that heated NEC meeting, where the issue of Phala Phala was discussed. And if you remember, even Dr. Zulum Kiza, we saw reports in the media that he was not happy how some people are not allowed to speak in the meeting. Former President Mbeki attended that meeting. So, these are discussions. If you look at the top six, I think the only person who's new in the top six is Ms. Maropen Ramohopa. The rest of them were in the National Executive Committee. So, I don't understand what is it further to discuss. I think they've had his views inside the meeting. And I think for him now to write a letter is because you can see that there is no political will. When the ANC even says, he talks about the issue of renewal in the letter, and most of us would expect to see a different ANC in the process of renewal. An ANC that will shock us as citizens, when the Secretary General probably communicates, decisions of the NWC or the NEC. And what was very interesting about the Phala Phala matter, it was then referred to conference. But then conference took it back to the NEC. It even questions the caliber of members the ANC has, and he speaks about it also in the letter. President Mbeki says there is card-carrying members, and there's genuine cadres. So right now the ANC is full of card-carrying members. That's why they did not even allow conference to discuss the Phala Phala matter, because it's a serious matter. This can be seen what we call illicit financial flows, because no one knows where this money comes from. We know that this businessman is linked to the then president of Sudan, al-Bashir. If you remember, even the ICC, he was wanted. South Africa had to get him out at some point when he was in the country. And al-Bashir, he was not an ethical leader and so forth. So this also raises questions about this businessman who just walks into the country with so much dollars. The president keeps those dollars for so long while they're saying that that business transaction collapsed. Why didn't the money go back? And why was it not declared to SARS? These are some of the things that, if ANC members are really serious about renewal, they need to really deal with things differently, because of the biggest problem is that the ANC president always becomes bigger than the organization. And we saw this under the Zuma era, and we're seeing it even now, that outside of the challenges that face the ANC, people will close ranks, people will say hands off the president and so forth. You go to parliament, people will just, in the name of toe the party line. If you remember, Nkosana Dlamini Zuma was one of the few who was very vocal, who even voted against this, motion in parliament. And they tried to actually take it to DC. And she wrote a long letter to the leadership of the ANC, who then decided to withdraw, her hearing within the DC to explain herself, because she was engaging on organizational process and what the ANC stands for, and that's why they felt that they don't have a case. They need to let her go.
Yeah, in fact, to your point of the many unanswered questions, the letter actually speaks of many pieces of the puzzle that are missing. If we were to put this puzzle together and we especially take a look at the road to 2024, the ANC walks there how? Walks into 2024 how? Especially in the minds of the South African.
It's going to be very difficult. I mean, we're all looking forward to hearing the narrator in Parliament, what he's going to say, because, I mean, for the ANC, the President always spoke about even the sabotage at Eskom. Why don't they want to investigate that sabotage? You know, who is behind this? Because these are lives of ordinary South Africans that are affected on a day-to-day basis. You know, I mean, in terms of when you look at the jobs, you know, that are very scarce these days. You know, the unemployment rate is very high. So the ANC finds it a very difficult situation going to the 2024 elections, and we can look at even the by-elections. Look at KwaZulu-Natal, you know, they find it very difficult. Gauteng, I don't know if the ANC will be able to retain it, you know, because of, if you look at 2019 elections, they got just over 50%, you know, they failed to win back the metros in 2021, and even President Mbeki in the letter, you know, speaks about the decline of the ANC in the 2021, getting below 50%.
Rebone Tau, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon.
Thank you.